post them in the chat. If you want, really ask me anything about Power BI related, and I can help out, because it's definitely a tool that's going to come in handy in your careers to be able to take all the data that you'll have access to and make good decisions with it. And just for the focus for today, I have a brief presentation, and then I'll do some hands-on demonstration, and then I'll leave the last half of the of this meeting to let you guys work on your own hands-on solution, just to get familiar with the tool. You don't have to complete and turn in the completed solution to get the certificate. Really, the solution itself is kind of work at your own pace, and you should be able to download and extract all the content needed from the link I posted in the chat at the beginning of the meeting. So Power BI is actually part of what Microsoft calls Fabric. So Microsoft Fabric is their kind of latest and greatest software as a service solution, really to do all things data related. So Power BI is a part of Fabric. Basically, Fabric kind of took over the whole Power BI space a couple years ago, and it's all on a unified data platform that Microsoft supports. So definitely in your careers, you're going to be interfacing and using these various tools. Okay. Now, why Power BI, or how we're going to get there? That's right. I'll just check again. Can everyone see my presentation and hear me okay? Yes, thank you very much. Our first wave of kind of corporate BI would be IT to the end user. So this was because the tools involved required essentially programming knowledge, and they were kind of cumbersome. So only a select few in the business would get access to the reports and the data they need. And the development cycle was pretty long because of the special skills needed to get around the bottleneck. And this is actually where a lot of companies still are today, would be to embed analysts in every single team. So these analysts are typically hired in their, masters of Excel, and it rapidly speeds up their ability to provide information to their group. But what we end up seeing is that the solutions themselves are really just focused for one particular team. They're isolated from the larger picture of the entire data estate. Where we want to get to, and where Power BI will help drive this transformation, is to get to BI for everyone. So what we'll see using a tool like Power BI, we can get access to all the different data points needed to make good decisions. The end consumers can also get their own breakdowns without having to call back either an analyst or IT and get sub reports run or anything like that. And really start to kind of explore the different connections and impacts that are identified within a holistic data solution. Okay, so Power BI. Really, we want to use Power BI to drive a data-driven culture within every organization. So we're going to break down information silos. We're going to be able to connect to any and all different types of data you have to really start making better, insightful decisions. So we're going to be creating interactive dashboards. They're going to be natively mobile friendly. And as with everything nowadays, more and more AI is going to be infused and embedded in the platform itself. Once we have kind of a good base of Power BI reporting, we're also able to easily embed it into the kind of the fabric or the day-to-day operations of an enterprise, be it integration with Teams or customized portals, SharePoint, etc. Really, Power BI can grow and expand to give the data and insight to where it's needed. Okay, why Power BI or getting started with Power BI? One, getting started with Power BI Desktop is completely free. So all of you can go and download Power BI Desktop and you can use it for free, basically just to do your own personal data analytics. We have the ability to do real-time dashboards with and interactive reports. We'll see natural language queries and AI insights, and really the ability to customize any type of solution that you can that you might have need to future-proof the platform. Okay, so we'll see here. We'll get hands-on with Power BI Desktop a little bit later, but it's completely free to start. No license is needed until you actually start sharing and collaborating with others. You can create what's called, true real-time dashboards. So this would be something like sensor data that we might have either in a manufacturing process. I've also helped clients in the oil and gas fields, and they basically needed to keep measuring the pressure difference between inside a well and outside. It was a safety concern. So all of this can be accomplished within Power BI. So pretty much any type of need you have. I've helped manufacturers. They have automated welding machines. And, if they're down for even a few seconds, it can cause a larger impact. So they also had a need to basically constantly stream and show the effects of maybe an outage or to prevent an outage in real time. Okay. Natural language and AI, what we'll see is that we'll be able to prepare a data set and actually just ask it simple questions. For example, type in English, what is the distribution for this particular sales channel? We can see that we can dive into different, I'll call them impacts or different trees within the data, as well as without telling Power BI kind of what to look for, just see if there's any likely key influencer, right? So this is a fairly common a bit of analytics to bring into a company. Say, okay, what's likely lead? What are the events or the profile of our customers or events that happen within our system that might lead to either desired behavior or an undesired behavior? For example, I was working with a financial services company, and they record all interactions they have with potential customers, right? So they're selling into private equity funds, right? So they'll contact high net worth individuals and see if they want to buy into a particular fund, and they record all the types of interactions. So what we did there was say, okay, what types of interactions are you doing? Be it calls or seminars or hosted meetings or lunches or whatever. And then we have desired behaviors of people buying into the funds within 30 days of an event, and undesired behaviors, people withdrawing from the fund. So it was kind of interesting to see, what's the with the profile that we know of a customer or potential customer, what could kind of drive, what would be likely to drive those actions. And for this particular example, it turned out that we were able to determine that some of the internal salespeople were actually doing much better job with selling than the average. So there was a kind of an internal commitment to kind of grow their sales team's knowledge of how to better, I guess, interact with potential customers. Okay. We can also have customized visuals within Power BI. Again, this is more just to make sure that we're kind of future-proofing in the platform. Here we have some examples of this is highly customized jet turbine engine here, and we can see they are default by the different engine parts that are put into place. Okay. And then just quickly kind of integration into other Office style applications. including Excel. So I'm sure you're all going to be very familiar with Excel. We can actually connect to the same data sets that Power BI has and uses within the Excel client without re-importing the data. Also, you might notice that Excel is getting more and more kind of Power Query and Power BI plugins. They're basically taking some of the functionality that is native to Power BI and trying to stuff it in Excel because it's been so beneficial and useful to have. Okay, so really one of the main things to know with Power BI is that we can access any type of data. So basically any non-proprietary, non-closed system we'll be able to access within Power BI. So we can have things like Marketo, Google Analytics, Salesforce, right? Third-party platforms. We can have data that's coming from on-premise databases, local files, right? SAP, all that, any type of kind of commercial application, Power BI will be able to connect to. And what this does is it allows you to bring in different aspects of the data sets that might be impacting kind of the business needs or the business drivers. One example that I've had is working with a client in the beverage industry in Canada, and they were wanting to see two main metrics, right? Obviously, sales and margin and growth by particular brands, right? They have premium brands or super premium brands and kind of core brands as well as on-time delivery to bars and restaurants. And one of the things that I was able to do and provide to them is say, okay, we know whether or not a shipment was late. We know whether or not people bought particular products. But what we wanted to do was overlay that information with some open data. And that open data was weather, right? So while weather is independent of their actual sales, we could see that, if it was particularly hot days, like above a standard deviation or in the summer as well, that certain brands sold better than others. Also, if we had, so they were able to, once they recognized that, or once it was kind of easy to see, they kind of had it. They had this knowledge intuitively, right? Nice hot days, people think about going to the beach and buy the products specifically for that. But they were, once it was kind of easier to see, they then invested in forecasting companies. So companies will put in detailed forecasts per different regions, and then they're trying to estimate their sales based on that. And for the on-time performance for deliveries, what we were able to look at there is also relate if it was particularly snowy or rainy on particular days, and that was also driving kind of either missed deliveries or slow deliveries or something like that. So while that's not directly related to the actual transactions, we can start bringing in data from different sets that might impact it. And it's all about kind of having the best tools at your disposal to make those business decisions. Since we're able to connect to all this data, we'll see that we're going to use an intuitive interface to clean the data that comes in. So this could be that we have to process something like either leading zeros or fill in some data gaps. So we're going to teach Power BI, one time how to manipulate data before it comes in, and then every time we refresh the data, those steps will be repeated. And then we can start mashing up and connecting different tables of data together to form a nice solution. Okay, we'll be able to explore impacts of different attributes. So we'll have a drag and drop canvas here that we'll see, and it's natively interactive. So if you start to filter or sort or interact with one piece of data, it actually all interacts for you or filters for you within the one page. So really this is just because of the power of Power BI knowing how different data sets can connect to each other. It gives us the best way to slice and dice and get insight. Yeah. Like I said, very brief presentation. Now I'm going to start with Power BI Desktop here. Oops, it's asking me to log in. Okay, so here's Power BI Desktop just starting a new file. So I'm going to create a blank report. So within Power BI, I'll make this full screen. Within Power BI, we have an office-like environment. I've got my top menus here, and depending on what menu I'm in, I can perform different actions within that menu. On the left-hand side here, I've got the different panes of Power BI Desktop. So here we start off in the report view or a reporting canvas, which is all blank to start off. And then also we'll be able to see the table or data view, relationships or model view. And then these other two panes are more for kind of improving or writing the code within the system, which we're not going to be getting into today because it's an introduction. So we're just going to be dealing with these first three today. On the right-hand side, I've got the different visualizations that ship with Power BI. And eventually we'll have some data here to use. So I'm going to get started by getting some data. I'm going up to the top here. And what we'll see, also don't worry about following along with what I'm doing here on the screen. You'll have, again, the second half to be hands-on, and you have a guided lab to take you step by step through the working example. So here I'm going to go to get data. And now this one feature of Power BI, this gets repeated, is that if I click on the drop down, it's a shorter menu, or in this case, it's the common data sources. And then I can expand the full menu by clicking on more. And then we'll see all of the data sources we can try to connect to. This actually comes up. This is the same. Menu as if I had just clicked on the icon itself. Now, depending on your version of Power BI, this might look a little bit different on yours, but you'll still be able to do everything that I'm showing. So I'm going to start by by connecting to Excel and getting some of its data. So I'm going to click on Excel, and I'm going to browse to one of my examples. So here, I'll browse to some generic training material. I'm going to connect to this Excel file. This is taking longer than expected. Power BI is right with that. Just bear with me here. Okay, I might have to restart my Power BI desktop because it doesn't seem like it's doing what I want here. Turn off this preview feature. Okay, let me just see if I can just quickly update something here. Sorry about the delay. Oh, where was that? I will turn off the new Power Query experience. All right, let me just start up my desktop again. Maybe that feature needs an update from Microsoft. Okay, start with a blank report. I'm going to get data from Excel. Okay, so here Power BI is going to inspect that Excel file and bring back the different tables and tabs that it can see. Maybe there's something wrong with this file. Maybe it was corrupted. Okay, so I'll look at the file that I have in your shared folder. Data, I think it's a CSV file. So let's see one more time. Okay. Here. This. Here I'm going to click on transform data to show this particular interface. So when I clicked on transform data there with this CSV file, what we see is I'm now in this Power Query editor. Okay, so in the Power BI solution, Power Query is used to import data, and a Power Query turns one query into a table of data that Power BI is able to use. So you can see here I've connected to a particular CSV file, and then so similar to Power BI Desktop, I've got my top level menu options, and then depending on what menu I'm in, I can perform different actions. In the middle here, I have my preview grid. So this looks at the first 1,000 records and then gives me a preview of what the data is. So this grid is not editable, so I can't make any changes to this data. It's just simply displaying how the data is coming in. And then I can look and say, I've got my applied steps here on the right. And what this does, this is a recording of how Power BI is going to manipulate the data each and every time we load it. So for example, if I go back to these different applied steps, it says, open a CSV, and here's the location of the CSV. Automatically apply the step of promoting headers for me. So initially, the data just comes in, line after line. Power BI automatically promoted the headers and then changed the data types for me. Now, it may be that this was done in error or mistake, or maybe it wasn't done or wasn't detected before, so I'm actually going to delete those steps here and perform them manually. So a very common thing to do is to make sure that we have our attributes labeled properly. So here, our first line contains some header information. So I'm going to use the function here at the top as use first row as headers. Okay, so I automatically did that. And then you see here it automatically changed the type, but I'm going to delete that as well. So here I've promoted the headers, and now I want to make sure that each column has the right data type associated with it. So for my product IDs, I'm going to say that this is going to be a whole number. For here, this date, it's rather than treating it like text, I want to treat it like a date object. Zip, I'll keep as some text because I want to keep these leading zeros. That's important. But the number of units I sold, I'm going to keep as a whole number. My revenue, I'm going to make a fixed decimal place rather than doing some sort of floating point rounding. I'm going to have that information. I'm also going to go and get more data. Hopefully it works this time. Let's see my BI dimensions here. Let's open that up. Okay, finally. So here I've got a product table, and this has been a formatted table within Excel. We've got some geographic information, some open source geographic information, some data about manufacturers, as well as the product tab itself. So just to give myself a little more work to do as a presentation, I'm going to select the product tab and the geo tab here as well. I'm going to say OK. And now these are going to show up as separate queries in Power Query. Go ahead and refresh, that's fine. So within this geo tab, we've got looks like some printed information here at the top. So Power BI has already done some promotion of your product headers and change types, which I'm actually going to delete because it actually wasn't too accurate. Here I'm going to remove the first 3 rows because that looks like that's just some filler information. So I'm going to go to remove rows, remove top rows, and remove the 3 top rows. Okay. And now I'm going to promote the headers. So now we can see everything comes in properly. And I'm going to change the zip to be, rather than automatically change it to a number, to keep that as text. And we can see here, Power BI has noticed that we have a step here to change this particular column that was done automatically, and I want to replace that particular step. Otherwise, we would lose some information if we needed some leading zeros. I'm going to then look at my product tab. Go ahead and refresh that. And we'll see here, I'm going to do the common step here of promoting their first rows as headers. And now we can see that my data for this product, the product master table is incomplete. So for example, this is something you'll see commonly within data that's managed in Excel. So you don't necessarily repeat all the headers, all the header information that you might have. Right, so we can see they're labeled once and then left the other ones that are all the same underneath it. So I'm going to use a feature here called fill, and I'm going to say fill down. So what that does is where it sees a value, it's going to copy that value onto the next cell if that cell is empty. And as soon as it hits another value, then it's going to take that value and fill that one down as well. And we'll also see that I've got this product information here, and it looks like I've got more than one piece of information in one cell. So I'm going to highlight this product column, and I'm going to use the split feature. You can see here the different ways we can split out a column. But before I do that, I'm actually a good practice is to make a copy of what you're about to manipulate. Right? Oh, sorry, that's copying the file. So I'm going to add a column here, and I'm going to just say duplicate the column. So here I've got my duplicated column. So now I'm going to start, and this is just to refer back to, just to make sure that I've done my transformations correctly. I'm going to go to transform here, and split column, I'm going to say split by a delimiter or special character. So Power Query's checked out the data here, and it's picked this hyphen as it's not a common character. And I'm going to tell it to split starting at the left And when it hits this special character, then go ahead and create another column. So here we know I've got product, product.1 and product.2, that split column, and I'm going to rename this to be something like that's my product name, and maybe this is a something like product type. Okay. Now I can get a preview of this data here, and just by clicking on the drop-down link, we'll see here that this is not quite, what I was intending it to be. So it looks like I made a mistake on this split feature. So with these applied steps on the right-hand side, I can click on any particular step and then see how the data was like at that particular, as that step was applied. Now here I've made a mistake within my split feature, so I couldn't just simply delete this step and then try to redo it. But we also have the gear icon here. And if I click on that gear, what it's going to do is going to bring me back to that same menu where I made this decision. So rather than splitting with the hyphen symbol, I'm going to use the pipe, which is just above the enter key, and say OK. And then I can see that creating this product type is going to be more of what I was expecting. Okay, so now I can go through, and I actually don't need this product copy because my transformation is successful. So I'm actually going to remove this column. Now, what these instructions now have in the applied steps, I've got a step to duplicate my product column, and I've got a step to remove that duplicate column. So it would be better not duplicate it then in the first place, right? Because I only had this as a temporary check. So I'm going to delete that duplicate column. Say OK. Now, see there quickly came up with a warning. Said, are you sure you want to delete this? This might cause problems down the road. And I said, yes, go ahead and delete it. We can see that as I progress through my applied steps, that when I get to this remove columns of this copy, it was never created in the first place, so therefore it can't be removed. So this was now causing an error. That's the warning symbol I'm getting. So I'm just going to delete that step here. And now my data, at least for my product table, is how I'm looking to have it here. I'm just going to fix this into a decimal number. So now that I'm done telling Power BI how I want to, what data sources I want to connect to, and what steps I want to take to transform that data, I'm going to say close and apply. Now what this does is it closes this Power Query editor, applies the steps to each of the data source, and then it will physically load this data into my file. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and then we'll see it'll be loading the data into my report. Pause there. Any questions there just first on connecting to some data and applying some cleansing steps? Okay, so now that that data is loaded, we can see here I can go to my table view, and we can see, I didn't do anything with this. Oh yes, I manipulated the geo table to remove some of the bad rows. I've got my product table as well as my sales table. Okay. Now I want to check here, because Power BI automatically checks to see, is there any relationships? And here, it did actually detect that there was relationships between these different tables. I'll get into that just right now. So what this means is that because I've got relationships between the tables, and I'll go over how to create them from scratch in just a minute, I can take some information from my sales table, for example, revenue, right? And it's saying, okay, here's the sum total of all my revenue. Now I can say, okay, give me by the product type, for example. Okay, so here's a breakdown of revenue by product type. then maybe I want to have a different type of chart. And I'm going to say, give me the number of units sold, and here a different table by country. Okay. So I have these two different visuals here that I'm just, quickly created. I'll hide my filters pane. Now, because I've got relationships between sales and my geography table and sales, my product table, I'm able to get that breakdown that you see here. But also, as I interact with this data, it can apply filters to each other, like to the different elements on screen. Right. So as I click on, for example, productivity, this is now showing me how just this productivity segment is broken down by countries. So I didn't have to specify to Power BI, okay, when I click on here, run a subquery and filter the data set. It's all done automatically because Power BI is maintaining the relationships between these tables. So here I'm going to go back to the modeling view. So it's very important to have not just one big table of data, but to be able to take something like our sales transactions and link it to different types of data. So Power BI detected this automatically because I had the same column name of the same data type in these two different tables. But let's say that I didn't have that for whatever reason, because the naming actually isn't important. So I'm going to go ahead and actually delete those relationships. Now what we can see is that my two different charts now, I get the same value just repeated across all these different product types, and the same value of units repeated across all countries. Essentially what we see here is that Power BI is saying, I don't know how to relate sales to products or sales to anything in the geography dimension. So I'm saying, here's your total revenue or your total units sold by every single attribute that you've, every single entry for that particular attribute. So very important to check as we're adding data to our solutions that we have the expected relationship. So I'm going to go here to the model view, and I'm going to say manage relationships. I'm going to say new relationship, product to sales. So here it's picked it out automatically for me. Now all this has to be is that they just have to be the same type. So for example, this is the proper relationship, so I might as well make that right now, but I'll make an improper one for demonstration. And also from my geo table to sales. Right, and here it's picked out country, but that wasn't correct. It's even warning me that this is a many relationship. Connect to those particular fields. Okay, so some nomenclature here is that for this particular relationship, if you can see, I've got a 1 here and a star here. This means I have one and only one product ID in this table, and it's repeated many times within my sales table. So this is what we call a one-to-many relationship. Same for my geography and sales. I've got one and only one entry per zip country, and I have that repeated many times in my sales transaction table. And this allows the breakdown that we saw before of being able to slice and dice my sales by these different tables. Now, if I created an improper relationship, but still technically valid, what we'd end up seeing, so let me just delete this, for example, and go to manage relationships. So let's say I'm going to my product table, and I'm, again, going to select my product ID, but rather than connecting to the sales table, it's connected to the units. Sorry, the product ID in the sales table is connected to the units. So this is technically valid because these are the same data types. What we'll end up seeing is that this is not an error. This is just simply a different relationship. Is that I'll still get some results. However, it looks, very different, right? Like, so it's almost all of my revenue is going to one particular product type. And that's just because that this is how the data is distributed. Excuse me 1 second. My daughter's got home and she's playing the piano, and I want her to not play as I'm presenting here. 1 minute. All right. Next to that. back. So we just see that this is basically just creating, kind of giving us a funny look of our data or a bad distribution. So always, again, important to check that what either Power BI assumed was the relationship or what you created is true. So I can go back here and change this relationship to the product ID. Okay. Now, by far the most common type of analysis you're going to do is going to be based on time, right? People are going to want to know what's, the year-over-year growth, what's year-to-date, what's month-over-month, etc. And in order to build proper time intelligence within Power BI, we need to have a date table, a date dimension. So this is going to be an independent table with just a listing of dates that we can use. And then we're going to relate that table to any of our any of our transaction tables. So in this case, we just have sales. But if we had sales and inventory and, customer requests or feedback, that type of different types of transactions, then we want to say, okay, on this day, multiple things can happen. We want to see them all reflected in our reports. So I'm going to quickly create a table within Power BI. So just for convenience, I'm going to go over to this table view, and I'm going to say new table, and I'm going to call it a date table. And I'll post in the chat and also explain this. So this is going to be using the calendar function, and calendar needs a start and end date. So I'm going to give it the minimum value from my sales date and also the maximum value from my sales date. Okay, so we're not going to get into too much of the programming here, but I will explain what this formula is doing. So anything, and I'll also post in the chat so you guys can have this example as well. So anything to the left of the equal sign here, so this is a language called DAX, Dynamic Analytic Expressions. It's the language of Power BI. Syntax is very similar to Excel, but there's a few key differences. So anything to the left of the equal sign is just simply the name I'm giving this particular object, in this case, a table. Anything that precedes open parenthesis is a function that I'm calling. So in this case, it's a calendar function. And then within the parenthesis is the parameters that I'm giving, and they are separated by a comma. So I'm supplying another function. The min function is giving you the smallest value. And then a single quote here, the single quote, and then sales means look at the sales table. So single quotes identified table. And then the date object within that particular sales table. So that's going to be the starting parameter. And then my ending one is going to be the max. So this will change every single time I load. The date range will change every single time I load my sales, but the formula itself will stay valid. So now that I have this particular table, I can go ahead and link it up to my sales. So I'm going to go to my relationship view, modeling view, and I'm going to say new relationship from my date table to my sales table based on the date. Now, when I go to my breakdowns, I can, for example, I'll make this a matrix. And let's say I'm going to use my date year. We can see that automatically Power BI knows that there's a date hierarchy. I can put my years on my columns, for example. Okay. Now I have this particular breakdown. I can get some more value from. Now, why we don't use the sales transaction date for our analysis is that I might not have a transaction for every single day of the year, and where I don't have a continuous range of dates, my time-based intelligence is not going to work. And I'll get into an example of that in just a bit. Also, now that I have my independent date table, again, if I wanted to bring in another transaction table, I can link them both to the same date table, and I don't have to kind of double filter each table whenever I wanted to make a change. So, any questions there? I'll pause a bit about relationships in Power BI. Pretty soon I'll be handing it over to you guys. Okay, so I also want to talk about creating measures, KPIs within Power BI. So here, just for convenience, I'm going to be looking at my sales table. And this is where we're going to start putting some defined calculations. So we see that Power BI has the ability to automatically add things together. So it by default just wants to add anything that's a number. But I want to explicitly define what my sales revenue is, just in case there is a change down the line of maybe booked revenue versus written revenue or some other change in the data. I don't want to have to go and update every single visual with a different field or apply a filter. I want to have one place that defines what my sales dollars are, and then I'm going to use that over and over again. So I'm going to say new measure. So similar to creating a new table, it also uses DAX. But here I'm going to create a measure and I'm going to call this sales dollars. And I'm just going to simply say, go ahead and do a summation from my sales table of the revenue. Okay, so now I've got, what you'll notice is that the results actually aren't stored, unlike Excel. When you do a formula in Excel, it stores the results in the column. Here, you just simply define the definition, and then only when it's called for do you actually see its results. So here, I'm going to replace my default sum of revenue by my sales dollars, and now you can see I get that particular KPI or measure. Now from there, I'm going to add some time-based intelligence. So we'll see that I want to also have year-to-date sales. So we're going to go back here, and I'm going to say new measure. And let's call this sales dollars year-to-date. That equals, now there's a function here called total year-to-date. And the expression I'm going to provide is to reuse my sales measure. So within square brackets, it defines a measure. The dates are my date table that I've just added. And if I have a specific year-end date, like a different fiscal year-end, I could supply that as a parameter. But for now, I'm just going to leave it as a simple calendar year-to-date. So now what we'll see is that I've got the ability to, let's say, I'll delete this table. And let's say I want to put in my my dates rather than as a hierarchy as just the individual days, and then show my sales dollars and my sales year to date. So my sales year to date will climb right until I get to the new year, and then start again. So pretty simple way to get these running calculations. And I can also do some other calculations. Let's say I've got sales year to date. Maybe I want to have sales year to date last year. So I'm going to create a new measure. And we can do sales dollars year to date minus, I don't know, 1 year. Say. And here I'm going to provide my expression of calculating sales year to date. However, do something like the same period last year. Now here, I'm going to just change this up a little bit because I don't have obviously a full data set. So I'm going to just quickly say, give me a year slicer. And I'm going to just alter that to be just, oops, move there. And then I'm going to add the dates here. And we can see, I can see what my sales were this particular day, what they are year to date, and what was the year to date total for last year. So this year to date last year is going to. Right, so from here I can do something like percentage growth or anything like that to actually show differences. But for getting started, I'm off to a pretty good set. here I'm able to do some time intelligence to link my sales to some different dimensions, and I can start, producing some content to show. Okay, so I'm going to include my quick calculations here in the chat. And then it will be time, there's the remainder of the time is for Q&A and for you guys to work through your student exercises. So should have been able to download that student zip folder in the chat or file in the chat. You'll need to extract it. And then in that link, let me just go here. What you'll see is I need to go to someplace else here. Oh, in your extracted student folder, we'll have here the lab for the session. You can open up this guide, and then it's going to give you step-by-step instructions on just really getting familiar with Power BI, the different types of things you can do. So kind of starts here on page 7, loading data, and then just remember where you save the files, and this will be your guide for the remainder of the session. Okay, so the screenshots might look a little bit different just because of the tool gets updated every month, and this is a couple years old, but you will be able to do all of these different functions here in your Power BI desktop. Okay, so if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. What I'll probably do next, I'm going to stop sharing here, is actually just, I'll see if I can unmute everybody. And then if you do have a question, you can just simply, give everybody the ability to talk. And then if you do have a question, you can unmute and just ask. There we go. Everyone should be able to unmute now if you do have a question. Okay, so yes, the remainder of the time, any QA, and also to work on getting more familiar with that lab exercise. You don't have to complete and send me the solution in order to get the certificate. It really is just for your own benefit of getting familiar with a new tool, because you will be using this, or you will be coming across Power BI in the workspace. I can almost guarantee it for everyone.